Okay, what we're going to do right now is I'm going to try to correct the unevenness of the bevel on this Opinel number 6 blade. You can see it's wide. I hope this comes out good on the camera. It's very wide at the heel. It gets narrower under the Opinel label. Wide again right as the belly gets started, and then very narrow at the tip. And the other side is similar. It's uneven. See, I let my friend sharpen this knife, and that's how this happened. Isn't that what you're supposed to say when you do something and it's not what you wanted? You blame it on somebody. So my friend did this. Okay, well, I'm going to try to fix it. And right now I'm starting with a 320 grit Shapton glass stone. And I'm going to be using a technique that I don't know if I put it together with a bunch of advice from a bunch of different people. And it's the simplest technique that I've ever come across as far as exactly how are you going to move your hands when you sharpen. Most people say do what you like best and all that kind of stuff, and that's fine and that's good, but you have to know where to start. So if you're just learning to start, it's nice to have a plan. So what I do right now, and I'm pretty much new at freehand sharpening, given the fact that I've been doing it all my life, but I had no plan. I just got it sharp enough to open up cardboard boxes and things like that, and I was fine. But now I'm getting more interested in detail and sharper edges and that sort of thing, so I care more about the technique and exactly how we move. So what I do is I keep the knife blade at a 90-degree angle with the stone, regardless of the 90-degree angle of the edge. The 90-degree angle of the edge, in this case at the tip, I would be holding the blade like this, which is another very good technique to use. It will change the scratch pattern, the direction of the scratches, rather, but that doesn't bother me at the moment. So I keep the blade at a 90-degree angle with the stone. I adjust the angle by lifting the spine to whatever I want, and then, since right now the only part of the blade or the edge that's touching the stone is right along here, once it starts curving into the belly, it lifts off the stone. So to sharpen this area, I just lift my hand. The option there would be to shove the tip way out ahead of you, like this, to get all the way around the stone and then be stroking. And that's fine. It's a very good technique. A lot of people use it. But this is the simplest, I think. And it's the easiest to control. So when you're first getting started and don't have a lot of muscle memory in your hand movements and stroke movements, this one I think is a very good one to start with. And once you get this under control, then you can deviate and expand your movements or whatever you want to do. But so this is explained all that for anybody that's learning to sharpen. It may help, may not. Anyway, I'm going to try to fix the bevel on this Opinel number 6 using a technique I've started using. Now I use my other hand. Some people I've mentioned this technique to say they have a problem, and I did. I had to force my hand to learn this. But the benefit of using both hands is you can see, and you need to feel also, but you can see how high the spine is off the stone right now. If I were to use my right hand only, I'd have to do it like this to come back, and it's a completely different everything, the way you're holding the blade. It's harder to get the same angle doing this way than it is this way. So I use this hand, and now it looks the same, and it will feel the same, except it's my left hand. But I am right-handed, and this was hard to do, but that's what I did. And you can do, whatever you want, of course. So here we go. I'm going to try to fix the uneven bevel. So I'm going to lay the blade. The blade is flat on the stone. Get up here where you can see. Flat on the stone. Raise the spine to where I want it. Now I want this bevel very low. By the way, this carbon steel on the Opinel knives seems to be a very good steel, holds good edge. I like it. And so here we go. I've got my angle set. I'm going to lock my wrist and fingers and hand to hold the angle as I stroke. Okay, and then I'm going to lift my hand as I go around the belly to sharpen the entire edge. Right now I'm just going to be setting the initial bevel. And you can see on the stone what part of the edge I'm sharpening. Normally I use my fingers on the blade, the fingers of my other hand, but I want to keep them out of the way just for the video. I'll stick them up there from time to time for control, but if I'm making a video, the only purpose of that is for people to be able to see. So I'm going to try to forget about the camera. Every time I'm new to videos also, so I keep thinking about the camera. I get preoccupied with that, and I become inconsistent with what I'm doing. So the best thing to do, I think, is just forget about the video and worry about what I'm doing and then see how it comes out. Okay, notice my hand is locked, my left hand in this case, the hand that I'm holding the knife handle with, and to get around the belly I lift the knife straight up. You got to be careful not to twist the knife blade as you go up. You got to keep those motions. Actually, this is not a motion, this is a position. You got to keep that position as you do the lifting of the handle motion. I have had a problem, and I know it's a problem, of twisting the knife, which that changes the edge angle. And in my particular case, I lifted the handle to get around the belly, and at the same time I was twisting the knife, which increased the angle. So, and I noticed that because the bevel was narrower around the belly and the tip. And doing this, when you lock your hand, you can actually feel, after you've got a flat or pretty flat, you'll never get completely flat with freehand sharpening. I know I can't, and everybody, even the professionals, say nobody can. Not like an Edge Pro or Wicked Edge or that sort of system. But once you get a reasonably flat bevel, you can feel it. You can raise lay it on flat on the stone, raise the spine. You can feel when you're in that. Picture the bottom of a rocking chair. If the rockers weren't round and they had straight cuts all the way, you go bloop, 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 like that. That's exactly the same thing on a knife edge. Okay, I'm going to look at it now after doing a little work. Okay, I haven't got it good at all yet along the up towards the tip. See, it's still very narrow, which means, let me see, this is getting better, this side. So on this side, it looks like, as I raise my hand to go around the tip, I am still possibly twisting the knife at the same time. So once you get up here, if I have twisted the knife, I'm going to keep the angle lower. When I get up here, the bevel will be very narrow, and that's what it is. So in this case, I can see the rest of it. Now here, where it's already, the bevel is ground up very high, all you can do to make it even is to grind the rest of it the same. And I don't know that I really want it up that high, but so I may have to live with a little bit of it being higher than the rest of it. So that's just the way it is, no big deal. But anyway, this one, see, if you can see that, the bevel at the tip is very narrow compared to down here around the belly. The way to widen the bevel is to, well, you got to lower the angle. And in this case, I'm thinking that I'm raising the angle by, when I lift my hand, I'm not keeping the angle the same. I'm increasing the angle by twisting my hand unintentionally. So now I'm going to force myself, and I'm going to lift my hand immediately, and I'm not going to stroke up to get this area. I'm going to lift my hand immediately because I only want to work on the bevel, around the belly. So I'll keep my hand out of the way. Now I'm going to lift. I'm going to have to use my fingers. Now I'm paying more attention right now to whether or not I'm lifting. I'm paying more attention to whether I'm twisting the blade. I'm trying not to. Okay. It's getting better, but I'm not getting all the way to the tip. So, keep working. Another thing that makes it difficult for me right now is the stone is farther away from me than it normally is because of the camera. The camera is sitting right in front of me, and I'm having to reach farther away, and that is awkward. In fact, it's not good at all, to be honest with you. I feel much better when I get the camera out of the way and just sharpen. I apologize if it sounds like I got a cold, because I do have a cold. Now, how high you lift your hand is very important. You don't want to go too high, because if you do, too high would be like this, of course, but you see, if you go higher than you should, you'll be rounding the tip off, which you don't want to do. Okay, that's getting better. So anyway, you see what you're dealing with when you're trying to fix a bevel. You've got an uneven bevel on a knife edge. It's been created for one of any number of reasons. You don't really care how it got that way unless you're the one that did it, which in this case, I confess, I had no friend. I did it. So, and this knife has been sharpened freehand and with the Edge Pro since I've owned it, so there's no telling what I've done to this thing, good or bad. And I'm going to make this comment about myself, so you can take it for what it's worth to you. I can't always trust what my hand feels like. Like right now, I'm trying not to twist the knife, which changes the edge angle. That's what I'm thinking about. And as I raise my hand, it feels like I'm almost twisting the knife backwards, because my problem seems to be twisting it this way by accident. It feels almost like I'm twisting it backwards in an effort not to twist it forward. But no matter what it feels like, the only thing that tells you what you're really doing is by looking at the edge. And this is getting better, much better. It's not there yet. But that's the thing. Your hand will remember how it moves, how it feels, how it is held. Excuse me just a minute. That's called muscle memory, of course. So once your hand gets locked into a certain feeling or motion, regardless of what it feels like to you anymore, you have to go by the results. And in this case, we're sharpening a knife. So you have to look at the edge, see what's happening to it, and know that you are the one that's doing whatever is being done to that edge. You can't blame anybody but yourself, or you can't give credit to anybody but yourself on when things go right. I used to play a lot of pool, and people used to say they enjoyed watching somebody, not me, but somebody that can really control the cue ball. well, you don't really control the cue ball. You do what the cue ball demands be done for you to get those fantastic curves and all that kind of stuff that good players can do. You don't control the cue ball. You do what has to be done, and then the cue ball will kind of say, okay, I'll do what you want me to do since you did your part. You're not controlling anything. You've adapted to the situation and done what needs to be done. We have very little control over most things. Okay, I'm gonna quit worrying about that right now. It's getting good. I'm gonna start worrying about the rest of the bevel on both sides, and I'm gonna go back to working on the entire edge. But I will keep in mind what's going on at the tip on the other side, because my right hand can develop muscle memory, and it may be very good. I almost said perfect. Muscle memory might be very good, and I'm getting very good results. But then my left hand, which is more uncoordinated as a rule, because I'm right-handed, may not do as well. Okay, I'm not lifting my hand now because I want to do more work on the heel end of the edge. Right now I'm back to lifting my hand. If you saw a minute ago, the edge dropped off the bottom of the stone. That's really, really bad. The only thing good about it is it happened now when I'm not working on the edge apex. I'm not trying to get the knife sharp right now. If I had been trying to get the knife sharp and it was getting sharp and I was just ready to quit, and then that happened, well, you got to back up a few strokes and start over. Because if I did dull the blade by doing that this just now, it won't matter because I'll be working on sharpening it later. I'll say something about factory edges on pocket knives. There's nothing magical about a factory edge or factory edge angle. The angle is what it is when you get the knife out of the box. It is even on both sides. Looks very nice, or it's not. Most factory edges come toothy. I think they are ground. They are sharpened very quickly because they're being manufactured, and you got to do things fast when you're in that environment. If you made the knife yourself and you're a knife maker and you're sharpening it for a given individual who placed an order, you can spend more time, like I'm doing right now. Not that I'm one of those people, because I'm not, but well, anyway, what I was getting at is the knife edge that comes out of the box, it's good or bad, it is what it is. It's not like it's better than any other edge that you're going to put on your knives in the future. But I've seen a lot of guys on the forums, and I used to ask the same questions because I'm not, one of the experienced guys that you want to listen to. I'm the guy that does the listening at the moment. I'm making these videos for two reasons. One, if I can help a beginner, that's good, but I also would invite anybody to comment on something they see me doing that's wrong. Comment on it. I want to learn. But there's a sharp edge inside every blade. We just have to get rid of the steel that's not part of that edge. That's all. The guy asked the sculptor, "How did you sculpt that beautiful horse out of that great big rock?" He said, "I just cut off whatever wasn't horse." Makes sense. Okay, I'm still, for some reason I'm not getting that area like I want to. I think I may be lifting the handle too high. And if that's the case, I can fix it by staying on that part of the edge, but I won't lift the handle as high. See, I'm going to let the edge tell me what needs to be done. I'm not going to claim that this is the best technique in the world and I do it better than anybody else in the world. That would just be stupid. And I'm stupid enough without trying to be stupid. So look at it, and if you have to slow down, you can feel what you're doing, and that comes at different levels. I've got a certain level right now that I'm feeling things at. Okay, bevel's getting wide. Sorry, needs a little work there, but this is not I'm not shooting for perfection here. I just wanted to create, or to kind of get rid of the obvious unevenness of the bevel. Another thing that can affect that, let's say you are a perfect human being and you do have a perfect stroke on the whetstone and all that. The blade itself can be part of why a bevel may be uneven. Maybe it's just a fraction of a hair thinner at one point than another. At that point, if the angle is the same and if everything has been done perfectly during the sharpening process, if the blade is thinner at one spot, the bevel will be wider. Okay, still a little thinner here, but it's getting wider here, so I don't know. But now, see, right there is where it needs the most work. So what I can do is I can put pressure right there on the other side of the blade, which will put more pressure on that portion of the edge. I've got this thing rigged up so, and it's not working very well, but the whole thing, my homemade sharpening pond, is sliding around. But you can apply pressure to given spots on the edge with your other hand, with the fingers on your other hand. Okay, it's a lot more even than it used to be. Still not perfect, but I'm not going to grind away a bunch of steel. It still cuts very well. It was sharp when I started. That area at the tip still bugs me though. And this is something, what I'm worried about right now is absolutely unimportant when it comes to getting a knife sharp and getting it where it will cut well. This is absolutely only for appearance, not performance. But for this video, I'm going to quit worrying about that right now. I do not have a good setup for taking these pictures, these videos. Excuse me again. Okay. Anyway, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to work on the apex, because the bevels I create are going to be a certain amount of, there's going to be a certain amount of convex shape to them, a rounded shape, because you can't hold your hand perfectly flat. So I'm going to increase the angle a tiny bit. And now my goal, instead of making the bevel even, is to work on the edge apex. Now this is where it starts getting more important. So I'm going to slow down for one thing. I'm only going to use push strokes for another, because you also at this point have to start worrying about burrs. And what you want to do is create as small a burr as absolutely possible. What would be perfect is if you could sharpen one side, grind steel off the side of the blade, is what we're doing, until it just perfectly meets up with the other side of the blade, with no burr, with absolutely no burr. that would be perfect. But we were all taught that you know you've reached the other side of the blade or the edge because you can feel a burr on the other side. And that is true, 100% true. But a burr is wasted steel. Once you get that burr created, you have to get rid of it. So the only other way to know if you've reached the opposite side is by cutting something. If the knife won't cut, it's not sharp, and you haven't reached the edge apex. You haven't made both bevels meet. Okay, this one's cutting okay right now. It's not done yet. But what I was getting at is when you create a burr, like right now I could be creating a burr on the top side of that edge, you want to remove it by flipping the knife over. I'm going to try to create a small burr just because I'm doing a video. You do not want to do that in real life. Okay, the burr should be over here. Okay, I can feel a small one, especially right there. Okay, now, the way to get rid of that, if I were using trailing stroke, I could, in effect, straighten that burr out without removing it, and it would be metal that was first of all in one position, bent over, if bent is the right word, and on the other side of the edge. Now, if I were to straighten it out, this edge may feel very, very sharp, but that metal that is actually your sharp edge is very weak because it's been folded one way and then folded back out straight. And everybody knows when you bend metal back and forth, it gets very weak. So that burr bent back out straight would be very weak, and when you go to start cutting things, it's going to snap off, and what do you have? You have a dull edge. Then you think that blade steel that you spent a bunch of money for has poor edge retention, when in fact it probably does have excellent edge retention, but the sharpening left a little bit to be desired. So the burr is a very important pesky little fellow that you absolutely have to become skilled at getting rid of. And when I say getting rid of, I mean removing it, not straightening it out straight. A lot of people I've heard say things they use a steel, like chefs, you always see them on TV, using a steel with trailing strokes, and their idea is they actually plan to straighten any burr out to make the knife sharp, which it does, but that steel is still very weak. So if you can remove it by doing push strokes, you're going to grind. If there's a big old burr on the edge of your knife, right, you want to grind it down. You don't want to flip it out straight, and you don't want to push it back like that so that it's folded over, of course. You got a burr there. I hope you understand what I'm doing here. You want to grind it down until it's at the edge apex. I know that wasn't very good visual stuff, but anyway, that's what you want to do. And you do that, the only way you can grind down a burr and not create one on the other side at the same stroke is by doing extremely light strokes. Very, very little pressure. As much pressure as you can possibly manage. And that's another skill that needs to be developed, is using extremely light pressure. And none of this is rocket science. Anybody can do it. And you will become as skilled as you want to be. Or, in some cases, as you can be with the amount of time you have to practice. But to be able to get a knife sharp does not take a lot of time and a lot of practice. It takes some, and if you want to be real good, like some of the professionals, you got to spend a lot of time. You can't just sharpen every one of your pocket knives and when they're sharp quit. You have to practice and practice and practice. But again, this is not something that is going to save the world from the bad guys or anything, so it's not all that important compared to our daily things we may have to do. Okay, definitely needs work. Okay, I'm reaching on 30 minutes on this thing, and I know it's probably getting boring. So I'm going to raise the angle a tiny bit just so I can apex it. When I would normally keep stroking until the edge was apexed at the lower angle. Because one thing that is the same is the thinner the blade and the lower the edge angle, the better it will cut. That's just a fact. But some blades and the tasks that are going to be required to perform the blade and the blade can be too thin and the edge angle can be too low, so that steel at the very edge is weaker than would be required for the task. Two comparisons would be a very thin fillet knife for the kitchen and a camping knife that you may be chopping wood a little bit with to make a fire. So there's give and take to all parts of it. I feel for a burr. It feels good. Trying to keep this paper off the stone is another thing, because it's wet. I don't want the paper. It's getting there. Okay. I'm trying to hurry now to get done with this video, and I think I'm apexing so the final strokes are all going to be one stroke per side, and that is to reduce the amount of burr that I'm creating on one side. If I create a tiny burr, I want to get rid of it immediately, so I flip the blade and get rid of it. And once you have apexed the edge and are stroking with a given amount of pressure and creating a little tiny burr on the other side, that is when it's essential to start with the very light strokes, so that you put enough pressure and grind enough to get rid of the burr, but not create a burr on the other side. So you just let the blade lay on the stone, and you do your best to use very light pressure. And then to find out if it's working is you cut something. Let it get. Still not cut. I'm getting in too big a hurry here.